But when you think about people who carry the formal title of leader, some of them you might love them. You aspire to be like them. There's others where you're like, heck no, wouldn't never want to work with them, under them, for them, never. But they're still considered, they're still a leader. Like it doesn't matter. But leadership, so title aside, has some core values, but it's truly defined by how authentic you are about yourself and how you show up in times where your leadership is called. And I think to do that well requires deep reflection, understanding your blind spots, and not in the sense of to be perfect, but just to know like who you are, how you can show up, and maybe also knowing when you got to tap others to help fill in the gap.
Sneakers, cars, leadership. Sneakers, cars, leadership. Atlanta. Built different. Legacy moves. A podcast that goes into the essential leadership skills needed to excel in both personal and professional life. Hosted by me, Dre Hub. This podcast offers insightful conversations on how to be an impactful leader of self and others through influence. We will draw from diverse experience and backgrounds to provide practical advice and engage in discussions on a wide range of topics. Sneakers, Cars, and Leadership promises to be an engaging and informative podcast that equips listeners with the tools and insights needed to lead effectively in all areas of life.
Awesome. Welcome back to Sneakers, Cars, and Leadership. I'm your host, Dre Hub. And so we talk a lot about leading teams and building brands, but today we're going to go to the root of it all. And before you can lead a movement, you have to master the person in the mirror. And when talking about leading yourself, the foundation of leadership, before I bring in my guests, let's look at the gear. And so for me, these are the shoes I'm going to have today. So these are the Yeezys 450 Stone Flats. This is what I got. And this is probably my first pair of Yeezys, probably first pair of Adidas. I'm a huge Nike guy, but I got these. They're very comfortable, and they were kind of departure from the traditional design. They rely on this exoskeleton that kind of cradles the shoe, and it's kind of a reminder of that like outer success, and it's only good as your inner structure. And as far as the car, I'm thinking about, I had a 2020 Ford F-150 King Ranch. It was black on black. I love that truck. It kind of carries the legacy of the largest ranch in America. That's where it came from, King Ranch, and it's built on a military-grade aluminum, strong but light. It's a perfect metaphor for self-leadership. So building a character that is tough enough for the terrain, but refined enough for the mission. And you have to be the king of your own ranch before you can manage anyone else's territory. And so joining me today is a leader who manages communication on a global scale. I'm not talking about just in the U.S., I'm talking about global. And she knows exactly what it takes to stay centered when the stakes are very high. So Kiara, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me today, and tell the people about yourself.
Hey, Dre, thank you so much for having me. And I love this concept. Yeah, a little bit about myself. I'm Kiara Lane from Richmond, Virginia, raised there, moved to Atlanta about almost 11 years ago. But yeah, I'm a wife. I'm a mom. I love that title now. Mom. Not now, just because my daughter is only one, but I love it. I'm a mom. I'm a proud connector of people, places. I'm a little bit of a wanderlust. People tell me to sit down, and not just in the sense of traveling, but just in the sense of passion. So I do tend to move to where the spirit tugs my spirit. Tugs my soul. Yeah, I went to school 3 times. I don't recommend that as I look at student loans. But yeah, today I lead global communications for Coca-Cola's marketing function. So that's over 3,000 marketers around the globe, and getting them excited, pumped, and ready to take marketing to the next level, especially in this era of things like technology, AI, digitization, all of that stuff. And I think all it ties to is that, like, I have a profound love for storytelling. I've been a reader since I was a child, and thankfully I had parents who fed into that. I went to a magnet program to fuel that when I was in high school. It's what I have studied up until that third degree. But I think I am where I'm supposed to be. because I've tapped into that wanderlust, that spirit that is Kiara, and, it has served me well. So, I'm happy to be here.
Awesome, awesome. And it's I will say, for those who listening, here we met a couple years ago and became has become a great friend. I would say a great mentor, guide, and support. For me, I've learned a lot from her, especially from the comms standpoint. Like I would
Mhm.
say my communications have elevated to a whole nother level before. How I would communicate and report out and do things and really being more, I want to say, purposeful
Mm.
in my presentations. Like when I'm putting together a deck, it's not just slapping stuff there. It's like, hey, who's the audience? Where does stuff sit? Like, how does that whole thing come together? Learning these different marketing terms. So I appreciate her for that. So, and then I also come to find out we both from the DMV area. I was born in South Boston, Virginia. So she was Richmond, Virginia. So I feel like we probably got some family in there that might be some kin somewhere because the
Somewhere.
world is not so big. So
Mm-mm.
no, I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I got the two signature questions before we jump in. So, do you have your favorite pair of shoes, or is there shoes that kind of bring back a fond memory that you kind of bring to mind?
Okay. My favorite pair of shoes. Okay, I'll tell you, it has changed. Well, first, I was not a sneaker girly probably until I met my husband, who is definitely into sneakers. So I realized over the years I'm more of a classic silhouette girl, refined, polished. Uh, and so with that, I love a good I feel like Air Jordan 1, like Jordan 1s, high, not mid or lows. Those aren't me. And I got a lot of them in all different colorways. They're my favorite. My favorite one out of those though, oh my gosh, I don't know like what were they called when they came out, but Dre, I'm sure you've seen them. They're purple, black, and white. And I
Uh-huh.
love them because the, laces that came with them are, oh my gosh, what is it called? Like tie-dye. So I have one one shoe is black or whatever the standard default lace is, and then on the right is the tie-dye, and I feel like that's me, like, refined, polished, but a little bit of surprise and delight that make people go, "Ooh," you know? So that's probably my favorite sneaker. I do wear my sneakers to the bone, so they tend to get scuffed up, and I don't care. Okay, and then what was part 2 of that question?
Part two would be, so is there a favorite vehicle, or is there a vehicle that has some type of fond memory as navigate through your journey in leadership?
Ooh, can I do a 2 for okay,
Yeah.
so 2 fond vehicles. My 2 favorite vehicles, one, my first car, 1988 240DL Volvo. That thing, it was a Volvo 240DL. That's what it's called. That thing is a tank. It was ugly. It was silver. I feel like we have to find a picture of it. Yeah, it was my 16th birthday, and my dad he's also a prankster. So when he took me, my best friend came over to my house early because we were having a sweet 16 party. And so she came over early to help me. And my dad was like, "Oh, I got a surprise for you." So we drive into the rural country of Richmond, Virginia, and it's that car, and I was excited, but like, "What is this?" The car is older than me by a year, but it's a good example because 'cause 1, my dad was smart because I definitely got into, like, 4 car accidents, and the car would no damage done to the car. It carried me through midway through college. It was a really good car. It was sturdy. It kinda went through all the things that teenagers put cars through. And my dad was a smart man, but man, that car was mm. And then the second car is probably I had a 2000 and ooh, I don't even remember the year it was. Was it a 2008? I don't remember. RAV4 and Toyota RAV4, and that car means so much to me. I don't have it anymore because it was like the car that carried me through a lot of transitions in life. Um, you know, I feel like every car I've had, Kanye made a song about it. But I had the RAV4, I had the Honda Civic, every car I had the car. So anywho, but that car carried me through so many life transitions, including getting me to Atlanta, which was a huge life transition. Yeah, so those are my 2 favorite vehicles.
So small but big but small world. So my first car was a gold 240D Volvo, and but it only lasted for a couple hours. So my grandfather's in DC, and so he
Uh-huh.
brought me my first car. So I got up to DC, and I was trying to drive it back from DC to Georgia, and it actually broke down outside of Richmond.
Oh, dang.
And so my uncle had to come from South Boston to come get me, to take me back, and then then again my second car was like a 1989 Ford Escort GT. But yeah, but I had that 240D for a couple hours. It was gold, and I remember like the whole time trying to get from DC, and then before it broke down outside of Richmond, I was trying to get the heat to work.
Oh gosh.
And by the time I got the heat to work, that's when the car died on me.
Gosh. Oh, so you know exactly what I was talking about in terms of what it
Yeah,
looks like.
yeah,
It's a tank.
yeah. And our first family car was a white RAV4 with blue
Wow.
interior.
Good old faithful cars. So I don't know, the kids today, they get really nice first cars.
Yes.
I don't know. My daughter, bless her heart. I don't know. I'll see what's on my spirit. Maybe I'll be like my dad and give her a good tank to
Yeah.
destroy.
And we have been talking about that too, about first cars. But I wonder when you think about these kids and their first cars, is it because they can get a car that might be from the 2000s, but it might be like 5-10 grand, or it might be
Yeah.
less than that, but it's like a nice BMW or a nice Mercedes. But it's kind of like, yeah, but your first car is a BMW and a first Mercedes. But then if you compare it, it was like, well, it costs the same price as a Honda Accord, as a Honda Civic. So it's like seeing these
Yeah.
kids in these nice cars and then souped up pickup trucks and everything. It's like, man,
Things
kids
are
got, yeah, they got Teslas. I was like, really?
right. Things are different. I'll tell you this, my brother's first car was actually a Mercedes, but it was like, again, like a '89. It was like a 80 something. Actually, my dad got it for a steal. It was like, a Mercedes station wagon. I forget exactly what it was, but it had a sunroof. Probably back in the day, it was really nice. And my brother didn't care for that car, but again, it was a tank. He ended up selling it to a family friend. That family friend like souped it up, and it is like truly, it's an antique. It has antique tags on it, and people ask about it all the time. They want to buy it. I don't know. I don't know. What you getting your kid?
Yeah.
What's the first car?
They gonna get one of the cars I got.
It's gonna be nice. It's gonna
Well,
be nice.
and so that's the thing. It's like, well, I guess that first car would be nice because it's gonna be a car that I have. But and we were talking about this, and my wife said we're not gonna give them, because she has a Bronco. She's like, hey, we're not gonna give them my Bronco. I said, but by the time they start driving, the Bronco is paid off, and it will be less than us buying them a car. You're just thinking about when you first brought it brand new, and we're
Oh,
giving it to them. So yeah, but
your kids aren't that young, so yes, they will be driving a nice car. That's hilarious. But yes, your wife's Bronco is very nice.
So yeah. All right, so we're gonna jump into our first question, and really, it's all about around self leadership. So, why do you believe, or do you believe self leadership is the true foundation, of leading others, and especially in high stake jobs?
Yeah. It's I was thinking about this question a lot. Well, there's a couple of things at play. I think first is the rise of like individual contributors, at least in corporate America, right? This idea of that, you may not have people that report into you, but you may have the role of influencing others, or sometimes they call it like leading without authority, right? Or
Mhm.
formal authority. Like you cannot direct, a colleague to do something, but you have to influence or convince them to help you reach a certain goal, right? Or complete a certain action. And so with like the increase of that and the flattening of organizations, we see more and more individual contributors across the workplace. And so with that, and also kind of this evolution in workplace culture of like people being self-sufficient, less micromanaging, you are responsible for, you own your career, all those things, right? And then also, so that's two. And then the last one is just the increased ambiguity around roles and work. Like we got the job description, but then you have reality, add in like complex environments. So with that, the ability to lead yourself is so important. And when I say lead yourself is because some people it is a struggle, right? To build in routines and processes to figure out how to be efficient and effective, how to manage emotions and stress again, during times of ambiguity or you don't know what's happening. And if you're in a position where you have to, what's the word, provide counsel to leadership, you really have to maintain and govern yourself, or in your words, like self lead. And so, with that, you almost have to treat yourself like your own employee at times. You have to really have true reflection on like what fuels you, what drains you, and not in just the sense of at work, but just holistically, right? Like at home and work, because I don't believe there's like this true balance. It's just kind of figuring out where the switch goes on the range of life at the moment. So you really got to think about like how can you show up the best way you can given your current circumstances, right? And so with that, for me, because this depends on everyone or if you or everyone's own journey or if you're an entrepreneur or just whatever works for you, whatever your reality is one just tons of self-reflection, again back to knowing what fuels you, knowing what drains you, how can you be efficient, what tools work for you to kind of get a process in place to know how you're achieving goals. That second thing is really knowing who your stakeholders are and categorizing them. You mentioned audiences earlier, but that's so key and critical to success of anyone, whether you're a leader of people, a leader of self, a leader of a network. You got to know like who are the players that you have to attend to. So this could be formal stakeholders like your leadership team. And I always think of like, how can I help them look good, right? What do they need to know to be successful? And what way do I need to deliver messages to them or updates to them in a way that they can deliver to their stakeholders? So I know like with my leader, I'm not doing a super long drawn out email. I write in bullets. I share what's important. If you want to do a deep dive, check out this attachment. Because I know the response back is going to be like, thank you so much. Right? And then also thinking about like the people that you got to work beside. So not just but the people beside you and what works for them or what are their needs, right? So you may be trying to achieve X in a project, but you got to think about like what makes your colleague, the one that you may have to rely on, tick, right? Or what are they trying to achieve when it comes to this work? And then I think also what's important in that, especially when we talk about working alongside people, is like the golden rule. It's like, do unto others as you wish done unto you. Like genuinely just being nice, giving people benefit of the doubt. Of course, there's times where you have to maybe lean in and really kind of have tough conversations. But just the simple fact of being nice and truly being a partner to your colleagues, that helps. So that's also a way of like self leadership, being aware of those stakeholders. And of course, those who might not necessarily report into you, but maybe is a dotted line into you, like same concepts, like fueling them in a way that they can help you achieve what you need to achieve. So to me, like while maybe formally or on paper, you might be a leader of self, the truth is leadership is defined by you and how you show up. So that's that reflection part. Leadership is how you motivate or move others to go in a direction that you would like. So that's that whole network approach above, beside, below, dotted line, all of those things. But I think what's really, really important is back to really knowing yourself.
Wow. And I know you talked a lot about just, supporting leaders and influencing others.
Mhm.
You talked about influencing without authority. So what happens when leaders neglect themselves?
What happens when leaders neglect themselves? And I guess we could like double tap on what does neglect look like. I think that neglection back to work, life, and all the things that makes up, our day to day. We see things like burnout that is unrecoverable. I think some people assume, like, all right, if I go on a vacation for a week, I'll come back refreshed just for the next day. The first day you come back to work, everything hits you back, right? So that's, how do you take care of yourself day to day? Working out, meditation, prayer, reading, fueling yourself with knowledge. So knowing what makes you thrive. So for me, I like sources of inspiration. I like to read. So when I can tell when I'm off, when I don't feel any creative inspiration brewing inside of me. So I always got to read. Every morning starts with listening to 2 podcasts, and I got to read something. I got to get some energy outside from somewhere. But for others, that might be different. So what's that routine? Also, what I think is interesting is neglecting yourself is back to like that inspiration or that connection to something. When you tend to work every single day without finding time to just have a genuine coffee chat, quick connection with friends. That's why I like lunch so much. I'm not the work at my desk, eat lunch at my desk type of person. I do like to, even if it's for 30, 20 minutes, step away, get some fresh air, talk to people, because you just never know. Or you can share a problem or issue, and someone will say something that'll make you go, oh, snap, I didn't think about it that way, right? So that connectivity, whether during breaks or if it's just a virtual chat or during lunch, encourage that. But I think what's really important is something that I've noticed that isn't talked about in terms of leadership is really taking care of your being, of yourself, and also making sure that you're taking care of like the other priorities that matter to you. So if you have a family, if you have a spouse, a partner, a dog, like taking care of those elements, because that's where you see stress becomes an all-time high, especially when work might be, let's say stress level 0 to 100, that thing is hitting at a 90. What are the other things that can balance you, right? How do you take care of your health? If you're eating crappy, not getting enough sleep, all that stuff trickles over, right? It shows up. And what we see, especially when work gets really, because sometimes we can't predict it. If you're in a industry that is determined by the economics of things, and so there's moments where things could be like highly pressurized or very stressful. You got to have your ways of like, how do you, despite the stress, still show up, can meaningfully contribute to the solution or how to navigate complex times. And I've seen it where some leaders, for example, there might be things just a brewing, right? So everyone's stressed out. I've seen leaders lock themselves in their office for multiple days. No one sees them. They slip in and out. I've seen things happen, but you see things like outbursts. And maybe it's not necessarily something happening at work, but maybe something's happening at home and someone's trying to keep those things separated just. So that's why self-care days are also important because that's just the reality. Like no one is just perfect in one extreme of life. So you really gotta, so when it comes to neglect, like that's just really back to tuning in, back to those fuels and those drains. How do you show up in your as your best self? And your best self doesn't mean always 100% happy, but your best self given the circumstances and still showing up and contributing the way that you agreed to. So whether at work or at home, how do you still show up with the capacity that you got, with the level of optimism or positivity that you may have? And it might be a little or a lot, but just making sure that you show up and still as that leader that you are.
And some of those examples that you share, like, what are some common blind spots that you've seen that leaders or yourself or and when I say leaders, it can be anyone. It's not, it can have to be a leader of
Mhm.
people, it could be a leader of however, just anyone. Like what are some common blind spots you've seen people have? Or maybe you just, notice about yourself?
Yeah, some common blind spots. Ooh, that's a really good one. The first is kind of what I just touched on, like
Yeah.
your well-being is off. You're trying to grind it out. You sacrifice. You like, oh, I don't feel like going to the gym. Oh, I can sleep 3 hours and, be my best. Mm-mm. Don't do that to yourself. Blind spot because we know it accumulates and create, situations that, just doesn't serve us well. Another blind spot is I think how much likability plays a role in
Mm.
terms of likability with others. We always hear amazing leadership stories about going against the grain, doing things differently. Great stories. But what I have learned, especially over the past 2 years and having conversations, hearing from speakers, having really good dialogue, is that everybody at some point cares about sentiment, stakeholders' sentiment. If it wasn't important, there wouldn't be like approval rating polls or performance polls, or we wouldn't be talking about, team building because at the like while it's to go against the grain on the surface, the truth is you do want people to like what you're doing or to say yeah or have some sort of
Yeah.
agreement. And so I think like not everyone has the same level of like where likability falls in their decision making, but I do think it's important to realize where does that fall in your I mean, mine's play an important role because I work on like public's perception. Like my stakeholders have to like, and then there's times where, is way down lower, but that's the reality of like the work I do. And so it varies by person. I think another blind spot, I don't know if this is a blind spot, but I think when we talk about when life can be a little intense and what does that do to us in the workplace, I think like sometimes we use work as a coping mechanism, which is fine. Sometimes you just got to do what you got to do to get through. But sometimes we got to think about what does that look like to people who might be watching you from afar. I've seen things like deaths in the family or someone is handling like a ill relative or spouse and they show up to work the next day. Oh, it's fine. Or they kind of like minimize it, right? Things that could be, rightfully so. Probably should take off a day or and then too on the other side, you hear their direct reports or, those under their realm of influence struggle when they are going through life to say, I need help, I need time off. Because they're looking at the role model. The role model is you. The role model is the leader who said, no, I can come back to work when really they should probably take some time off because it's sometimes it's kind of less about not saying it's less about you, but it's less about like your ability to grind it out despite going through challenging things at home. But it's like also, what is the message that we're communicating to others who are looking at you? And they don't necessarily say in their mind, well, they grind it out. I'ma also grinding out when I grew through tough things or my kid is sick. But they think about it, it becomes like a cultural norm. So I think that's a blind spot because I think, again, that's something that over time it accumulates to something that could not be pleasant. Could be like, toxic work environment because no one thinks they can take off when life gets tough. Or someone works so hard, ignoring what's or trying to push through what's happening at home that it leads to, burnout or just, health. It's not uncommon for people to have things like mini strokes because they're trying to balance stress at work, stress at home.
Yeah.
So I think that's a blind spot. So I think it all kind of back to like well-being, the role of likability, like really down to how well do you know yourself and being honest with it because leadership is not I mean, there are definitions, there are values behind leadership. But when you think about people who carry the formal title of leaders, some of them you might love them. You aspire to be like them. There's others where you're like, heck no, wouldn't never want to work with them, under them, for them, never. But they're still considered, oh, like they're still a leader. Like it doesn't matter. But leadership, so title aside, has some core values, but it's truly defined by how authentic you are about yourself and how you show up in times where your leadership is called.
Yeah.
And I think to do that well requires deep, deep reflection, understanding your blind spots, and not in the sense of to be perfect, but just to know like who you are, how you can show up, and maybe also knowing when you got to tap others to help fill in the gaps for you.
Yeah. I want to go back to something that you talked about as far as people being a role model, because I'll speak for myself. For sometimes there could be things that are going, and I love what I do. I love
Mhm.
my job. It's a passion. So it's not a, I want to say, a strain on me. It's like kind of refuels probably
Yeah.
too much. You know, some people like my wife would be like, "Oh, friend, like, oh, you're a workaholic." Like, I don't consider myself a workaholic because it's a passion. It's what I love to do. And you talked about
Mhm.
integrating versus balance, but you talked about that role model piece where if you're going through something, for someone like me, if I'm going through something, I would like to go work. I need to be busy
Yeah.
because if I sit there in it, it's going to drain me more than if I'm being busy, you know, trying to navigate through things while I'm thinking about it. Because it's not like it's out of sight, out of mind,
Right.
but I have a busy mind, so I can do multiple things at one time.
Yeah.
So, in that role model space, like, how do you be vulnerable enough with people around to say, "Hey, I can do this for me, but it's okay if you take time off to deal with whatever you're dealing with. Don't feel that you have to do what I'm doing." Because I think about it like this, is like, well, I'm not gonna stop doing it
Mhm.
because you're gonna feel some type of way, but how do I give you the strength and the authority to say, "Hey, if you wanna take time off, I'm not going to look at you any differently if you take time off for something personal."
Right. Yeah, that's the power of communication. You and I've had a conversation in the past. Like, I'm really big on setting the expectations with folks, letting them know what they can expect from you and what you expect from them, right? Because for me, or what I've seen, is like when you lay it out there, and when I say expectations, like letting people know how you work, what you enjoy, kinda, you don't have to go deep into it, but just kinda setting the norms, like, "Hey, I work all times of the day and night, but that is not the expectation for you." Right? That's why we have features like scheduling send on emails or Teams messages, or because you don't want to set the expectation that you send a ping, somebody gotta respond back, right? There's someone I know, even in the signature of their email, they're like, "Hey, you may get an email from me." It says something like that, but the essence of it is like, "Hey, you may get an email from me at off times. I'm just working at a time that's most convenient for me. Please respond when it is convenient for you," or something like that.
I like
But I
that.
think but just like setting the expectation, especially if you're working on global teams, global projects, or you're working with teams across time zones, or I mean, we all like juggling different priorities. If it's like kids are now in bed and now I get to really be heads down, I mean, that's the reality of life. And so my thing is, one of my principles is always like clearly communicate. And that's home or at work or whatever space. And so it's back to like just level setting. Here's how I roll. You ain't gotta do it, but here's how. But also, I think when it comes to home, and if even because my husband says sometimes I work a lot too, and similar to you, Dre, like my brain goes a mile a minute, so my hand is always in something. I'm always like toggling back and forth, but also knowing those times where it's like, all right, maybe I can't work on it tonight, but I do things like I keep tons of notepads and everything. I got one right here. And I'll like jot it down, jot it down, jot it down. Like, all right, I'm gonna come back to it when he goes to sleep. Or I'm gonna get up early in the morning and work on this because it's on my mind. Or for me, like my best ideas tend to hit me when I'm in the shower. And so I always wanna act on it right away, but, I think, again, clear communication, and then, of course, like, respecting the boundaries or giving space where space is due. So if it's home and you're like, "Ooh, I'm so excited about this one project, an idea just hit me," like, honor that you're at home spending time with family, jot it down, find that time. I don't know. This is just me, but find that time where you can sneak away and, like, kinda tip off something. Or maybe not sneak is not the right word, but time where you can kinda, like, really, like, tap into it while it's still fresh on the brain. And then for work, yeah, just schedule send.
I like now, and it seems like you have a lot of self-awareness. How did you get to that point? Like, was there a pivotal moment where it was like, okay, I need to think about different ways on how to navigate life in the workplace, professionally, personally, and everything? Or like, was that just from childhood? Like, was that always in you?
Yeah, so interesting because I literally had this conversation with someone like 3 or 4 days ago. I think it's a childhood thing. I'm a really good student. I have learned like when you listen to sage advice, take it because the other option is to learn the hard way. And listen, you know the saying, like, "Take me off the strongest God's strongest warriors list." Like, I don't wanna be on that list if I ain't gotta be on it. So, if I don't have to be on it. Now, sometimes God just puts you on the list, you're voluntold. But I think I learned that at a really young age. Like, I was naturally curious, inquisitive. I read a lot. I am strongly of the belief of, like, what, Malcolm X says, a lot of things are put in a book. I won't say the full quote, but it's like the things you really want to know, read. And a lot of people don't read. So I think out of that came this sense of independence and a lot of thinking, which also led to hyper awareness of self. I'm not saying I'm always right, but I'm really good at processing my thoughts, how I feel, what I want to learn and what I observed from others. And so, yeah, it has served me well across my life. My dad, I always joke with him, like, he had it made, like, eldest child, I'm the oldest. So he didn't have to do a lot as far as like getting me to school because I was doing it on my own. I would come to him like, it's time for the SATs. I just need your check you know? "Oh, here's the schools." Like, literally, like, "Here are all the schools. I just need you to sign off or take me to 'em." Um, financial aid, I did it all. I took your tax documents and even down to, like, setting the strategy of what I wanted to do, like, in college, I changed majors, and I remember I sat him down, like, literally like a business meeting, was like, "So, I don't wanna do bio pre-med anymore. I'm failing chemistry," which was, like, so random, like, why am I in biology when I've been doing comms and English all this time. And I sat him down and was like, and this is the journey and the pathway, and this is how it's gonna set me off in terms of completion. But I got it. So he just had it made. And then also being like a product of like my community and having so many people pour into my life. I had amazing parents, but also equally as amazing like mentors. And I just learned like when you listen to them, the money comes in, you get great opportunities. And when you read, it just opens your mind to think about the world so incredibly. And it gives you the words, the messages, the thoughts, the understanding of how to understand yourself better. So I truly believe like a great leader, a great person, great productive citizen of this world, a great coworker, et cetera, all the roles we fill, truly the ability to ask yourself questions
I
and
like that.
form hypotheses. That's really what it is because it prompts you to think.
Mm,
And so, yeah. Yeah, I think Neil deGrasse Tyson has also said it. Like, if you're able to form a hypothesis or ask really good questions, it will carry you well. And so that's what
man.
I've been doing myself and in so many other areas of life.
Yeah, it's almost a new thing, and it probably changed over a couple of years, especially with AI, is that no longer is the smartest person in the room with all the knowledge. That's not the smartest person in the room.
Right.
It's the person who asks the right questions. Like questions is the new currency
Yeah.
because you can get knowledge so quickly. You can Google something, you can get on AI, get that quickly. So you're not the smartest person in the room because I don't really need to ask you anything. I can just go ask it on my phone. But can you ask the right questions to make me think about something? That's like the new currency. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes. And you mentioned AI. I also want to put like a little asterisk. AI is not the smartest thing in the room or in the universe. You know what? I was watching, and I'll share the link with you, but there's
Yeah.
this woman who teaches at Harvard. She's taking a break this semester, but she talks about critical thinking in the age of AI.
Yes.
And I think we all know this, but it was a good reminder. She's like, AI, in terms of how most of us use it, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, et cetera, it spits out like the culmination of everything we put into it, right? So it's really just human thoughts, opinions, learnings, understandings. And it like predicts, based off of patterns, based off of what people are inputting, like what the answer could be. But something that and maybe one day computing quantum, physics and computing is very powerful, but something that's extremely powerful about the human mind is the ability to ask questions about things that don't exist because we have the ability to connect across concepts, across errors, across, like, our ability to think and know to ask questions about like what about if that's why inventors are so powerful because they help us find a solution to a problem we didn't even have. Someone went, well, what if we did such and such?
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. That critical thinking piece is always going to be there because even when you look at all these AI long language models and everything, there's still some human element in there because if it
Yeah.
was so smart, I wouldn't have to put in multiple prompts to
Yeah.
get what I'm trying to get in. When you build your agents and all that stuff. But no, I
Right.
agree. Especially with all these firewalls that we have across companies today, it doesn't have access to everything. You got the
No.
auto hallucinations are in there because it's predicting some things, but it doesn't have access to everything. And people talk about,
Mm,
Terminator and all these different movies. Like, well, the difference between those and iRobot and everything was that they had access to every single bit of data. That system could
yeah.
do that. I'm a Marvel fan.
Yeah.
Ultron had access to everything. Now, there was a human element piece in there that, he could not pull, that's what you're still gonna need us.
Yeah.
But we're like, it's so far beyond, it's just still gonna need that critical mind. So when people talk about jobs and everything, jobs are just gonna change. Like probably every job now just probably become a tech job. You're gonna be accounting tech because you're gonna be using AI, but you're still gonna have to have your critical mind to process and think through things. And I think that's what they can't get lazy. Like you still got to educate yourself. You still got to learn. You can't get lazy because you're the one that's gonna
Yeah.
have to understand where are the hallucinations in whatever the models and things that are coming out. So
Yeah.
yeah. Now, along those lines, so what are your go-to strategies for staying disciplined when your motivation dips or life gets chaotic?
Mm. Go-to strategies. I put a disclaimer. I am naturally that type of grinded out person. It's not always healthy, so I'll just say that. So that means what? Take the meat, leave the bones. Take what works for you, but don't take everything. Like what I'm saying is not, stamped in complete accuracy. This is just a point of view from my point of reference. My thing is, and I meant to say this in the blind spot section, is that we don't give ourselves enough grace.
Mm,
Sometimes life is hard. Sometimes we don't have it all figured out, or our emotions are bigger than, they just can't be contained. And sometimes you got to sit in that and allow space for you to feel how you feel. That's so, sometimes we want empathy or sympathy and/or sympathy from others. But like the first step is like, are you giving it to yourself? You're like, yeah, I messed that up.
mm,
You know, let me sit with this for a second. So I think that's, first a go-to strat. Give yourself grace, because if you can't forgive yourself, or if you can't acknowledge how you're feeling, back to self-reflection. But if you can't acknowledge yourself, then how can you expect others to do it for you, right? I think also go-to strategies is back to like power connection and talking to others. We can sit in our own minds. I'm sure we all know, or we do it ourselves. We create scenarios or outcomes in our brain, and it'll start forming its own life. And now we're thinking about the worst thing possible. We stressed out. We having like panic attacks going to work, your mind just racing. And then you go talk to someone and they're like, oh, da 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 da. You're like, what? For real? Isn't it funny how life works?
Yeah.
Sometimes we get so worked up, or they're like, "Oh yeah, I can relate X, Y, and Z," and sometimes it's just a matter of just sharing, not with everyone, but finding like we've all heard like board of directors, or board of directors, or confidants, or just someone that you think could relate and can give you a point of view. And sometimes it's your manager. Sometimes your colleague, sometimes it's somebody not even in your workplace. Maybe it's a mentor out there, somewhere out there, or it could be the person that you live in the house with. They could just be like, oh. So that, and then I want to make sure I answer your question correctly. What was the question one more time?
Just your go-to strategies to stay disciplined when motivation dips.
Yeah, when motivation dips. Okay, one of my leaders gave me this. So my grace, sometimes just talking it out loud. Do it anyways. That's the third one. Do it anyways. And I hated that because I'll I have to tell you offline who it is, but I hated that at first. I didn't hate it, but it's just one of those like, I don't want to do it because I've been told multiple times, or I don't really care to like interact with that person, or whatever reason why we don't want to do it, and our motivation just boom, or we feel deflated.
Yeah.
This person has told me, do it anyway. And he'll say it with a smile. Do it anyways. But you know what? He was right. Do it anyways, because it's back to self-reflection,
Yeah.
self-limiting beliefs. It's back to like what's getting away from you doing whatever. Sometimes it's like what's here. And sometimes we got to use logic to just push through and do it anyways. So those are my three.
Wow. No, I like those. I like those. Especially to do it anyway. Just do it anyway.
Like, you don't want to
Now,
go to the gym? Do it
do it anyway.
anyways. Because you know what? I've never met someone who went to the gym and afterwards they were like, "Man, I should have never went." Right? You're always like, "Well, I'm glad I went." Like, you never regret going to the gym, and I
That
feel
is
like that's
true.
just a great metaphor for life. Like, sometimes you just gotta do it anyways.
Yeah, like you don't regret working out. Like even though you feel the pain, you're tired, like you don't regret that you did it. Like you feel excited. You feel
Yeah.
like some sense of pride.
Yeah, you're like, well, and you may, like, to your point, you may not do your full workout. Maybe it's like, yeah, I'm gonna just walk on the treadmill because it's that day. But you know what? When you get off, you're like, I'm glad I did it.
Yeah. I like that. Now, as we start to wrap up, for someone who's listening that
Hmm.
know they need to work on their self leadership, but they feel stuck, what's one thing that you would challenge or submit to them to do this week to get back on track or
Oop,
get unstuck?
this week to become unstuck. If you feel like you're stuck, my thinking is that you probably don't have enough information about yourself. So that
Mm.
talk to someone. Feedback is a gift. And sometimes it hurts. Sometimes it bruises the ego, but that just means that you need to talk to others and think about how you show up. Because then that's also how you have such powerful self reflection and understanding of your leadership, or you are equipped with understanding perceptions, and perceptions in a sense of like, this is what happens when you lead, or this is what happens when you're in a group of people and you're trying to get them to move in a certain direction. Like, all of that is insight. um and it helps with blockers. So that's what I would recommend. Talk to someone. Talk to someone who knows you.
Yeah.
And I will also say don't talk to Chat GPT for things like that. I mean, um, Chat GPT is an amazing tool. I wouldn't over rely on it when it comes to your leadership
Yeah.
because it tends to be an agreement. And what you need is someone who can provide perspective that may not align to your thoughts. Another way is, I mean, sometimes I go back and forth about how I feel about them, but you can always take a leadership assessment or a personality assessment test. There's a tons of them for free, like 16 personalities and all those other ones. I'll be vulnerable about myself. Like I used to be someone, whether it was in my personal life with friends or family, then at work, I used to be someone that would be like, "Why is everybody looking to me for an answer?" Like, "Oh, why everybody asking me?" Or I would be even down in college, would be out at somebody's club and everybody, where we gonna go to next? I don't know. Like, why are you asking me? And my husband, I used to complain to him about it. This was like early on in our marriage. And he was like, "Well, Kiara, you're a leader." I was like, "I ain't asked for that." Like, but he's like, "No, you're just a natural leader. People clearly see it in you. They respect your opinion." And then what was interesting, Dre, is like I took one of those leadership assessments. So I took like the one that was offered by the company, and then took one like just on my own. And you know what my personality is or my leadership type? Commander. Commander. That is how I show up naturally. It's the way I tick. Um, and so boom, I got some information. My husband also offered some information. Now I know that about myself. And so with that, I can understand the right balance of how I show up in spaces. I'm layering that on like, with some EQ. I can't just come in and demand everything from everyone and think it'll go my way. But
Yeah.
it's back to like you ask and you receive. And then you know how to do better and show up better.
Yeah. You have not if you action not.
Mhm. Exactly.
Now, so with that, I'm gonna hand it over to you before we close out. Any final words, last words you want to share?
This has been a really great experience. I have, as a recent, have had the opportunity to talk about leadership, which is interesting because I just never thought that people would ask me questions or want to have conversations about leadership from you to amazing people like Everett over there at Kickstarter and places, corporations like the Home Depot. It's just, I have been incredibly blessed to be asked my opinion on something that is so important to so many people. And I just go back to, I think what is unique about my viewpoint is like I like to uncover the nuances of leadership. We all read the books and there's some commonalities that show up, but I go back to care of self that is really important. And that's what I want people to do is take care of like that's one of the key drivers of being an amazing leader, of yourself, of others, of your household, of your community, etc. Give yourself some grace. Stuff is hard. And leadership often requires a lot of unpopular decisions,
Mm.
approvals, likability, sentiment analysis, whatever term, whatever metric it is, do people approve or care for what you're doing? That matters, but give yourself some grace and know that there's going to be more tougher decisions than there are easy ones. I think remain curious. Like, I feel like that pretty much sums up our conversation. Like, remain curious, and that's how you become better. And yeah, I think that's what I want to leave the people with curiosity, taking care of self, and giving yourself grace. Because I feel like that'll keep you happy, that'll keep you productively discontent, and it'll show that you love yourself. That's the best form of self care you can give yourself.
Wow. That's pure gold. So, Kiara, I thank you for your time today for the real talk. We got to get you got to get your red talk soon. Get you on the main stage. So to everyone listening, remember that you are the primary project. If you aren't leading you aren't leading anyone. You're just reacting to everyone. So don't just chase success. Respect the discipline it takes to sustain it. Leadership isn't defined by the finish line. It's defined by the integrity of the drive. So take care of your soul, take care of your circle, and lead from a place of peace. I'm Dre Hub. I had Kiara with me, homegirl, friend, sister. I appreciate you and thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much.
See you, everybody.